why tracking calories stops working and what you should do instead. Sean here from Fit Fusion Brotherhood. I've owned a gym for 10 years. I've coached thousands of clients, many of whom have had a ton of success tracking calories to only get to the point where it no longer works. So this is a very common issue. In this video, I'm going to explain why that's happening and what you can actually do about it. And before we get started, I do want to explain that I am not anti-tracking calories. If anything, I am a big fan. I think in the beginning of anyone's fat loss journey, it is a great idea to learn how to track calories, to get those calorie and macro awareness points down pat, because I've said this before and I'll say it again, you're going to learn more about nutrition by tracking your calories than you would by taking a nutrition course in university. Okay, so I do think tracking calories is great, but I do think there are some limitations as well. So let's break it down and get right into it. Okay, so there are four main reasons why tracking calories can no longer work for you, whether or not you have succeeded before in the past. So obviously the big benefit of tracking your calories is making sure that you do have that consistency, you have some accountability and structure. But there are some reasons why things might stop working. The first one is what I call tracking fatigue. This is especially relevant for people who have been tracking for a while. Maybe you had a specific goal that you wanted to achieve and then you did achieve it and you continue to track a bit looser than you did before. So before you would be making sure that everything was weighed out and portioned correctly, and now you're a little bit more liberal and loose with how you approach your tracking. Maybe you have a few more nibbles and bites, maybe you're adding bigger portion sizes, whether or not you're realizing it. And these things can easily stack up over time. So humans are notorious for underreporting our calorie intake. This happens to everybody, and there are a few reasons for this, but one of the main reasons can be this fatigue of tracking. So if you're not meticulous with it, chances are your calories are higher than you think. And it's not that the tracking isn't working, it's just that you're tracking incorrectly. So tracking fatigue is a very common thing. So if you feel like you're stuck after tracking calories, it is important to consider that maybe you are taking in more than you think. Second one, along the same lines, this one has more to do with either labeling errors or discretion and or app errors. So you can be very meticulous with what everything says, but you have to understand there is a 20% discretion allowed with regards to calories in a nutrition label. So a nutrition label allows you to be within, or allows companies to be within 20% of accuracy, meaning they can probably have calories that are 20% higher than they list. And keep in mind, most food companies are going to be more incentivized to underreport their calories than to overreport, because they realize how health conscious people are now. So keep in mind, there's a good chance that even if you're tracking correctly with the labeling, with everything that you have in your food, that there can still be a 20% higher calorie mark without realizing. And then even within your app, so MyFitnessPal or any of those tracking apps aren't perfect necessarily as well. Sometimes there aren't the best pieces of information. So not everything is going to be super accurate. You might assume that you're putting something in on MyFitnessPal and it's 100% accurate. Most of the time it is, but not all the time. Okay, so you might be thinking that you're tracking perfectly, but because of labels or because of even the errors within the app, both of which are not your fault, you're actually taking in more calories than you think. Number three, this one is the plateau. So a plateau is a good problem to have. It's kind of a double-edged sword. A plateau just means you've had results for so long that eventually your body's caught up. So what I mean by that, if you're taking in 2,000 calories and you're consistently losing weight, it's just a matter of time before you will no longer lose weight while taking 2,000 calories in. It's a concept called metabolic adaptation, because as you lose weight, your body needs fewer calories, which means you burn fewer calories. So eventually, even though you're taking in the same amount of energy, you're actually burning off lower amount of energy, which is what we call a plateau. This is a good problem to have because this means you've been doing everything correctly and you just finally reached the point where the results aren't going to come based off what you're doing before. And that's when it's kind of time to reassess and figure out whether or not it's time to continue to push forward or take a step back and maybe go for some different goals. And then number four here would just be rigidity. What I mean by that is tracking calories can be great if you have a very consistent schedule, but if you're going out a lot, if you have like restaurants that you like to go out to or social events, it can become very tricky and difficult to count your calories. Even at your very best, the chances of you being accurate with it is going to be lower. So calorie counting can work and it works really well, but it is rigid at times as well. Okay, so those are the 4 major reasons why tracking calories may not be working for you anymore. Now let's talk about what you can actually do about it. Okay, so now it's time for solutions. And a lot of the things that you're going to hear me say now are things that I don't say often, because typically the first thing I suggest people do when they're trying to lose body fat is to track calories. But think about tracking calories like training wheels. You're going to get a ton of benefit in the beginning, but you're also going to be limited. So once you've been successful with tracking calories, perfect opportunity to step up into the big leagues and to shift focus. So number 1 solution you can do, think about intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is one of those things that sounds amazing and everyone wants to try it, but to be honest, it needs to be earned. You need to have a baseline understanding of how calories work, of how macros work, how your body feels when you eat a certain way, and what results kind of come. So intuitive eating, for those of you who don't know, is just a very subjective way of listening to your body's cues and eating based off of that. Now, obviously the downside here is there is not much structure at all. So the only reason or the only way this is going to be effective is if you have a track record of success, of losing fat, of eating healthy, of tracking your calories, and you can put it all together and start eating intuitively. Okay, so it's a great suggestion for people who have been tracking calories and being very rigid for a long time, because this allows you to eat some of the foods that you want, some of the foods that make you feel better, and then you don't have to stress out about meticulously tracking everything. It's very important that you still have some level of accountability to make sure you're eating the right things for your body and for your health, not just things that make you feel good temporarily. Number 2, focus on structure instead of tracking. So what I mean by that is try to be as routine as you can with your nutrition. So the one benefit of calorie counting is it can be flexible, meaning as long as you take in a certain amount of calories and protein, it doesn't really matter when you do it or how you do it. But at some point, it does help to be able to shift gears and focus more on the structure and the routine rather than the tracking itself. So if possible, try to eat the same amount of meals, ideally at the same time every single day. And if you want to kind of step it up a notch even further, the more consistent your meals are, the better. So if you're a foodie and wants to eat different foods all the time, fair enough, it's just a little bit more difficult. But if you are having some of these meals on repeat, it's going to make your life a lot easier. You don't have to worry about the tracking, and you're still going to get those amazing results. Number 3, watch your body or pay attention to your body, not your app. Okay, so we get so fixated over numbers, and again, works really well, but at some point, the best way to assess whether or not you're progressing is to listen to your body and actually focus on your body. Are you moving more? Is your performance better? Is your energy good? Are you noticing your clothes fitting a little bit more baggy? And just when you look in the mirror, do you feel and look better than before? Rather than using all sorts of objective metrics to assess progress, which I am a huge fan of, at some point it does help to be able to step back and focus on these intuitive and more subjective based cues as well. And then finally, focus on consistency over precision. So one of the big mistakes, or not mistakes, but one of the big side effects that can happen with tracking is you get what I talked about earlier, tracking fatigue, where you just get really sick of it and tracking calories your whole life. Some people love it, most people don't. So if you want to focus on consistency over precision, you don't have to worry about tracking those calories anymore. Kind of piggybacking on what I said with structure being so important. So just being consistent with how you eat, with how you train, with focusing on showing up every day, regardless of whether or not you're perfect, having certain non-negotiables that allow you to show up even when you're not really feeling it. Okay guys, so if you're listening to this video, there's probably a chance that you're either sick of counting calories or it's just not working out for you. Understand that this is a very common thing, and thankfully there are some pretty easy solutions that you can start to incorporate. So whether or not it's intuitive eating, it's focusing on structure, listening to your body, or really focusing on consistency over precision, all of these things can work. So it's time to take those training wheels off and join the big leagues. Don't have to worry about tracking calories anymore. Now that you've had that background knowledge and experience, it's time to step it up and get the same results and even better results you were getting, except you don't have to worry about tracking calories. If you enjoyed this video, guys, do us a huge favor, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.